The biggest disease in the world today, once said Saint Mother Teresa of Calcutta, is the feeling of being unwanted, unnoticed. And the greatest evil in the world today, she says, is a lack of love, the terrible indifference towards one neighbor, which is so widespread. The irony of the parable that we just heard proclaimed in the gospel is the reality that the truly poor man was not Lazarus, but rather the really poor one was the rich man. He was suffering from the worst kind of poverty of all, the poverty of the heart. His heart was empty. It was devoid of love and compassion. Even the dogs of the street showed more compassion in their own way than he did. What's interesting in that parable is that there's no suggestion at all that the rich man was an evil or bad person who injured people. Not an indication. Nor does it say that Lazarus was a victim of any oppression. None of that is mentioned in the parable. The sin then of the rich man consisted not in what he did, what he failed to do. And that was to notice Lazarus at his door. The two of them did not live apart. Lazarus was sitting at his very door. Yet the rich man lived his isolated life from the poor man. There was a gap, if you wish, between them, even though they were very close. The rich man lived his life without noticing the poor man was very close at hand. We might think that this parable is not addressed to me or to you. I'm not rich. Most of us aren't rich in material things. We have what we need, and we're very grateful for that. And so we might ask, then, why should we be hearing this parable? But if you think about it, this parable is not about money. It's not really about money at all. Even though we may not be rich in material things, we still have something that we can share with someone who has a great need. Because of that, we might ask, and the question may turn around in us during this whole week: who is sitting outside my gate, begging, not necessarily for bread, but maybe just for a word of recognition? I'm here. Recognize me. Or maybe just a bit of companionship. I'm lonely. Or maybe a little love or some forgiveness. That might be the one that's outside our door. Lazarus might be at our gate. He or she might be the one of the more than a million individuals who are homeless in America, who sleep every night on our streets. He or she might be the one of many fellow Americans who are afflicted with drug or alcohol abuse. Lazarus is at our door. He or she may be the one of the millions of Americans who have no access to good health care, who must choose between buying heart medication and perhaps putting food on the table. Lazarus is at our gate. He or she is a friend who maybe lost a job through downsizing, has had to take out a second mortgage. He or she may be that elderly person who is in a nursing home now for a long time, and no one has come to visit he or she. Lazarus is at our door. He is the person in our school or in our office, our neighborhood, that cries for respect, but may face ridicule every day or being bullied. He or she may be the person struggling with mental illness who comes off a bit odd and is counted as not a person of value. He or she might be our next door neighbor who recently lost a spouse for 40 years and hangs around the driveway as we come home, hoping that you'll stop and say hello. He or she may be that asylum seeker waiting at the border to escape violence and extreme poverty and is labeled an illegal alien. I understand very much we cannot be expected to reach out to the millions of people who are in need in our communities and nations. We don't have the resources individually to do that. But we can be expected to notice the Lazarus who sits at our gate, at our door. Who is that individual? What is their name? We know it. The name is coming to our mind right now. That person is the person that the gospel calls us to recognize, to notice, to touch. The gospel today asks us, don't ignore that person. Do not pretend that the need of one so near to you is not your concern. The rich man in today's gospel, as I said earlier, does not appear to be a bad man, an evil man, a destructive person. He simply does not recognize the opportunities that are present to him in order to connect with other people, to do what is right. He feels that his life is okay and fine. The parable asks us to open the doors we can to provide love, recognition, compassion, forgiveness, and justice to others. There's good news and bad news in today's gospel. The bad news is that we are very likely ignoring people who are close to us and who are in need. We close their eyes for whatever reason. The good news is that there still is time to change that. Lazarus is at our door. Jesus calls us to notice Lazarus, to let our love make a difference. The gospel encourages us, reach out, cross the gulf that separates. After death, unfortunately, it will be too late.